A very good evening and a warm welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, the NTV Uganda studios. And tonight on the show, we meet Peter Mutabazi, a Ugandan in the US. His story is one that caught my attention a couple of weeks ago when Peter, was accused of kidnapping his own son. It's good to have you join us on the show, Peter. Welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you.
All right, Peter, when I say Ugandan in the US, I think we want to first of all know about your alias in Uganda, where you're from exactly, and what do you remember about the alias?
Well, yes, the alias. Well, I'm from Uganda and I'm originally from Kabale. So I went to school, primary school and secondary school in Kigezi High School and Kabale Primary School. So I know my village quite well. So, yeah. Delighted to represent my country and my town as well.
All right. I know, reading from the story that was written about you, I know you come from a humble and really, really humble background. Tell me about your journey. I know at one point you were on the streets.
Yes, my journey. Well, I grew up, very just like any other poor child in my village. Life wasn't easy. I wasn't given much hope that there was something for me. As many kids as well. So I started working at a very early age. Helping my mom, as most kids do. Go fetch water. Miles away. Take care of my siblings. Being the oldest. That's what my life was. That it wasn't that pleasant.
I've read in your story that you were on the street at some point, and that's where your benefactor, so to speak, phoned you. Do you want to tell us about that?
I think I couldn't take the harshness at home. So one day I just got up. I didn't tell anyone and got on the bus, and I ran away. And my family didn't know where I was. I had never been to Kampala. I think the farthest I had gone was, I don't know, maybe, 50 miles away or 100 miles away from my village. So I didn't know where I was going, but I think I needed to get away in some way. My childhood was a little bit harsh, so I couldn't take it anymore. And it's not like I was looking for a better life. I think sometimes when we face the challenges from those who love us the most or who should love us the most, when they don't, in my case, I just didn't see the reason why I should be there. So I ran away to Kampala, and that's where my life, in some way, began.
When you say that's where your life began, tell me about your life beginning and how you end up where you are right now.
So while in Kampala, I got to meet a wonderful family. I got to meet, his children, and they truly, in some way, embraced me. So they put me in school. They made sure that I had everything I needed to have in school. Paid for my school fees. In some way, gave me a sense of belonging. And I think for the first time, I saw what a father should be. Like they gave me the example that I didn't know. That they valued education. That they really cared for me. In some way, it gave me the glimpse of hope. So I started doing well in school. And finally went to university in Makerere University, and I started working for Compassion International. And then I ended up in England. I got a scholarship to study in the UK. And then I also got a scholarship to study in the US. So that's how I traveled around or managed to really do well in life, because someone, not necessarily they knew who I was, but they cared that much for me, that gave me the opportunity to dream, the opportunity to see that life was more, than having food, but the life was, had a potential for me to excel, at school, but also excel in life that, it truly, truly changed my life.
Peter, do you think that your experience as a homeless child at a point, and also when you speak about how it didn't quite feel like home back in Kabale, all the suffering that, comes with the things that you went through, do you think any of that prepared you to do what you're doing now? Did it perhaps give you the empathy and the will to help out?
Absolutely. I think my humble beginning, and, having it rough as a teenager, and then having someone who in some way saw the potential in me that I didn't see in myself, he saw that I could make it in life, where I could not see it, in some way that really prepared me for what the future was for me. So from the get-go, as soon as I got a job, I worked for Compassion International because I wanted to be a voice for the kids. I wanted to be an advocate to say, look, yes, it was harsh for me. Yes, it wasn't easy, but somehow I made it through. That, to inspire others to not hold on their past or to think, well, I come from a poor background. I don't have any potential, any future for me. That I wanted to take away that kind of attitude that no, we have the potential to be whoever you want to when given a little glimpse of hope. And I wanted to give hope to others. And so that has always been my mission, and I think I felt for what this family did for me, I felt like, there's a verse in the Bible, what does it say? Luke 12:48 says, to whom much is given, much is required. That I felt I had been given so much, that I felt I had a family, that I felt I had been given example, that in some way I needed to do that for others. And so for me, that was my mission, so from there, I've always worked for kids, or always been an advocate for children, and fighting for especially the most vulnerable to have an opportunity to feel they are part of the world, that they have the potential, but also that they can believe in themselves, to make a change among themselves, but also to make a change, among their families and their communities as well.
I mean, a lot of us have compassion for children. We don't go out and adopt children. So how did your compassion come to you fostering children? How did you become a foster parent?
So when I came to the United States, of course, I was able to have resources and had a good job, and back home, I knew, like in Uganda, we always take care of other people's children. Like when you have a neighbor and someone, and they lose their life or something happens, usually the neighbor takes over. In our communities, I grew up in a home where, every child called, your uncle, your auntie's mom, that if there was no food at home, that I would go to my aunties and they would feed me. So there's that communal sense. So when I came to the United States, I realized they don't have the same. Like everything goes through the government. Everything has a law and how things are done. And I felt bad really that there were kids in my community who didn't have a place to go, who didn't have a home, and having, 2 extra bedrooms that were empty. I thought, how can I be a light to those that are most vulnerable? Like, how can I show the example, of yes, I come from the poor, the poorest, or sometimes who didn't have the resources like most Americans have, but we have values and principles and caring for others, that I wanted to do that, And so I walked to, they call them, the foster agency. Basically, every child that is in the custody of the government, you have to go through the government in order to help them. So for me, I walked in, I said, hey, look, I have an extra bedroom, is there a way I could help a child? And they said, have you ever thought of being a foster dad? Of course I was single. I was like, well, I'm not sure I can do it as a single dad, but they said, you can. And I remembered as a kid what I didn't have. And I remembered as a kid what potential was given to someone who didn't know me, but so that I was worth putting in school, that I was worth helping, that I was worth bringing into their home, that I wanted to do the same. And that's how I became a foster dad, in some way that I had a passion and empathy as well. I think for us who come from, not so wealthy families, that we understand the challenges we go through, but also we get to understand what others who don't have, the day-to-day life in some way that they need, that I wanted to really be that example as well.
What does fostering look like? What is your role, for example? Is it permanent also? Is it temporary? What does it look like?
So foster care system here in the United States is, so when parents when parents are not able to take care of the children, or if they are using drugs, or if they are in jail, or if there's domestic problem, usually the children are taken away by the government. And then they look for families who can have them while their parents are in some way sorting themselves. If they're in jail, they wait until they come out, or if there's no one to take care of them, then they are, they ask for adoption. So that's how kids come in the system, and then they're adopted, or they're taking care of families who, can in some way are forced parents is saying, I'll take care of you while your mom and dad are figuring their own problem. So that's how kids come in care, and usually they come, of course, with a lot of trauma. As a kid, they're taken away by force, and most of them they love their parents, but they don't know why they were taken away. And so that's how it works. That you have to have no criminal background. You have to have a passion, and you have to have room to be a parent. So you're fully a parent. It's your responsibility. But yet they pay for their health insurance. They pay for all their legal that they need, but you are the not legal parent, but you're the fully responsible for the day-to-day of the life, of the child. Most of them, you can't do so much without the authority. So if I need to take them to the hospital, usually I have to have authority or a signature from their social worker, depending on what state they come from or what county. So you are parents, but you're a parent with the government, or you're a parent with a foster care system that guides you on where to go and what you can do. But you have to have the children. They have to live with you, and it's your responsibility to make sure that they go to school, and they go to the hospital, and they eat and have the necessary basic needs they need while they are with you. And some come and stay as long as 2 months. Sometimes they stay for only 1 weekend. But sometimes they stay for 7 to 10 years. Some kids don't want to be adopted, so they can only stay with you and never be adopted. And some don't want to be adopted right away, so you begin the process of the adoption later. But usually they are the children of the state in some way, that you're just helping the state to make sure that they are okay.
All right. What is it like when they leave on you? I'm assuming that you get an attachment to these children, and then some of them, like you say, stay just a weekend, a month or so. What is it like when they leave?
Usually when they leave, it's the most difficult part of this, as a parent, because you took care of this child day and night. When you woke up, they were the first one to feed. When you go to bed, everything revolves around, as any parent does. So in some way, overnight too, you've had them for a year or 6 months, and all of a sudden they have to go back. Yes, that's probably the most hardest thing to do, because you bonded and you felt that, every day my kids call me dad, and all of a sudden I have to leave. That's really tough. But also there's a side of us that we understand that we are in place while parents are in some way sorting their lives so they can have them back. So you always know, but it's something you can never prepare for, to say goodbye to a kid you cared for day and night. And sometimes they stay for 5 years or 3 years, and then they have to go back. So think about, the bonding, the connection, the fellowship you had, and all of a sudden that they have to go. So yes, that's the hardest part. But knowing that you made a difference while they had nowhere else to go, to know that you were there while their parents could not, to know that you were there to, in some way to provide that safety, that loving home, that feel that they belong somewhere where nobody else was, especially those who should have been their protectors, parents, is a hard thing to do, but at the same time, a blessing to bless a child that had no parents to protect them or be there for them when they need them.
What kind of government policies, structures or interventions do such countries, for example, the US where you are, what kind do they have that seek to address this problem, the policies and structures that Uganda can adapt?
Well, so the good thing is that, something I like is the state, it's their responsibility to provide the best need of the child. So if the mom left the child and they're not taking care of them, the government takes them to make sure that they have all the best needs in order to make it and to survive and to be safe. That I wish, African countries or, Uganda, that state, when the child is in danger, when the child is neglected, when the child health is not in the right place, I wish there were resources or, government opportunities to say, hey, we'll take your child while you sort yourself, so to make sure that your child is healthy and safe. Yes, it costs money, it costs a lot of money, but, it's good that kids here have that safety, that all I need to do, if I knew the parents were taking drugs and were taking care of the kids, all I need to do is call the police, and they will be there and take the children and make sure that they are safe, or they are neglected, they haven't been fed well, and also the schools. So every child has to be in school in the United States. So sometimes the abuse is seen when the kids are at school. So the school is required to, report that to the police. And in some way to make sure that child is safe, and they come to the system, in different ways. They are sexually abused, they're physically abused, they are not fed, or, their parents, aren't there most of the time so they can, be taken care of. So, like any child in Uganda, like any family in Uganda, where we really put the kids in danger, the same as in the US, but the amazing part that they have is that system, the foster care system that truly helps and recruits parents like me, to say, hey, the parents were not able, or the parents are in jail, is there a way you could take care of this child while they're away? And it will give you all the resources. They have free medical care. They give you a little bit money to help them to feed them, but they'll make sure they go to school. So they will give you all the resources you need as a foster parent, so I can take care of this child. So they make it a little bit easy. As I said, it's like you're parenting with the government,
Yeah.
and I wish that was for us, in Uganda as well.
All right, thank you, Peter. Let's take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Tonight we're speaking to Peter Mutabazi, who is a foster dad, but also a house flipper, and he is based in the US, but he is a Ugandan. Peter, you haven't spoken to us about your foster child, Anthony. Do you have just Anthony?
Yes, I have Anthony, so he came to me as a foster child, and then I find out that, sometimes, the parents sign off their parental rights. In other words, they say, look, I don't want to be a parent to this child. And so the government takes over the child. And then for us who are looking for the adoption, then the kids are available for the adoption. So they call it the parental rights have been terminated. So when he came, he was supposed to be there for just the weekend, and then I found out that, nobody wanted him, that his parents had signed off their parental rights to the government, that we can no longer be his parents. So at that point, I felt so, I had had him for just a few days. I thought, he's a good kid, that he needed a family. And that took me also as well, like, in my childhood as a teenager, that someone had an interest in me and invested in me and cared for me, without asking so many questions, that I wanted to do the same, so right away. And for him, it was really unique. When he came in the house, he's like, 20 minutes after, I said, hey, you can call me Mr. Peter. And he said, but is that okay if I can call you Dad?
Aww.
And of course that touched my heart. I was like, oh my goodness, that somehow he knew I'll be his dad. And so once I knew his history, I thought, wanting me to be his dad, I should for sure be his dad. And so, a year and a half later, I was able to adopt him. So it's been a joy. It's been absolutely, the joy. When I started this journey, I thought I was just to help kids so they can be, with me for a short time and go back to their parents. I was really, really blessed to have him to stay for the rest of his life with me and have my last name as Mutabazi. So it's been a joy, yes.
How long have you had Anthony Mutabazi?
So I've had Anthony for 2 years and a half almost.
Okay. Was there ever any doubt about being approved to foster and adopt, him as a single father, but also as a black man?
No. So he, says before you become a foster parent, you have to go to class. So I had to do class for 4 months. They teach you how to be a parent, but also they teach you that most of the kids that come in have trauma for the difficulties they've gone through. So for me, I think from the get-go, I knew, hey, this is not a part-time, or this is not something I can do for a short term, that I wanted to do as long as, God had given me a little, house to be able to take care of them. So as soon as I knew, that he was available, I think, as foster parents, there's also the other side. Like we want to adopt the kids, but we don't want to we don't know until you know that they're available. So in some way, you don't want to break your own heart. So him coming, I knew, okay, I can force him, but I thought, well, if he's available for the adoption, I should be able to adopt him. So there was no doubt. And also when we get kids, so I've had 13 children. So 9 of them were Caucasian and 5 of them were, African American. So usually you don't know. When you get a phone call, it's usually like at 2 a.m, and they say, "Hey, we will have a kid, and would you mind taking the child?" And usually they tell you the condition why he's there, but you never know what color they are, what race they are. You just open your door, and there is.
You mentioned that there've been Caucasian children, but then there'll also been African American children. How big of an issue is that? Do you get in trouble numerous times? Same way, the article that we read about someone thinking that you had kidnapped Anthony. How big of an issue is it you fostering a Caucasian child?
So there's 100, and as for today, I think there's about 450,000 kids in the foster care, and they have few parents, they have few people who are willing to take them in. So they're really, in some way needing help. So for me, I think the common part people see here in the United States is, the same as in Uganda, I think. We see most Caucasians are the parents or are the ones who adopt, kids. So it's common to see a white family with Black kids. It's common to see a white dad with Black kids, but it's not common to see a Black dad or a Black mom with white kids. So that's where I think sometimes, people are looking at you like, well, we don't see that common, but are you sure you're the parents, But also there's the racial problems in the United States that, that sometimes as Black people or as Black did, we are seeing less of dads, that we are not capable of being dads. And so, when they see me with the kids, usually they come in 3 different ways. One is, are you sure you're his parents? And then the third one is, how dare you have them? And then the other part is, why are they with you? So they all come in different ways. Or some people are just curious, like, hey, you're a Black man, you've got a different accent. And then you have white kids, what's the relationship, And sometimes people are mean and sometimes people are good. And it's hard to know sometimes who's good and who's bad. But we always approach it as like, okay, you doubt me or you question me for being a parent, but you can't live that life, every day where you worry that someone's going to question you, that we get used to that. And I think as Black people are here in I States, it's something's common, they call on police on you, they do things that usually, they're doing it because they're profiling you. So we get used to that. And I think for me, having kids who don't look like me, that's even amplified.
Yeah.
That people are just asking or curious or sheer being mean, that we try to just take it as it comes.
I mean, parenting is difficult, demanding actually is the word, under normal circumstances. Where do you draw the strength to deal with extra burdens that come with the unique situation? For example, the same example that I just gave of a stranger, calling the police on you and saying he's kidnapping a child.
Well, the strength is, I think being aware, that you're being, that everyone looks at you and is questioning you. Sometimes even if they don't say, like, they're asking themselves, they're questioning internally, and you can tell, that, something's happening. You learn to embrace it. You learn to embrace it. But also that you're calling that, for me, that God called me to be a parent and no one is going to change it. Yes, with its own difficulties, even with trauma, I think to understand where these kids come from, for people who judge me or for people who don't understand, usually they don't know how these kids came by in my home or the issues the children are facing from, in their homes, that they are clueless, so they are only judging you by what they see. But they really internally or deep down don't really understand why you have those kids. And you can't make everyone understand. You can't make everyone know, that for you take on what you understand, you take on what you're committed to, and let the world kind of deal with whatever they want to, But I think for me, also coming from a world where I didn't have that opportunity to be the best I could or have the opportunities as a kid, and I want to do that for the kids as well here. So I don't pay attention. I don't pay too much attention to what people think or say, but rather, on how best I can be a dad to them that they need the most. And that's what keeps me strong, and that's what keeps me strong. But also that encourages me to do that every day without hesitation at all. That someone did for me, I can't do that for a child. And that's all that I can do.
I mean, it's remarkable what you're doing, Peter. We hear of wealthy celebrities adopting children from African and Asian countries, and I don't mean to discourage the practice, because many times someone who offers a child, a better life does a lot of good. But that said, one may wonder why we then have people crossing the ocean to come and adopt here in Africa, and yet there are many children out there who don't have homes.
Yeah, sometimes yes, I find that really strange. That some, again, our desires come in different ways. That their kids. I mean, literally, they're kids who have nowhere to go. They're kids here who have no home to be. There are hundreds of kids who are looking for adoption. But people will fly to a different country. And do that. That sometimes it's hard to understand. But also, the system. The system in the United States is harsher and harder than if they did in Uganda. The scrutiny and the background checks, the requirements that are needed can be really difficult or hard, and so people choose to go different countries where it's a little bit easier. So it's a hard one. Yes, I think for me living here, like wait, there are lots of kids that have nowhere to go, but yet you go to China. I'm like, what about the kids here? But also understanding that we all have different calling, we all have places we love the most, but also too, some people are not willing to go through, the scrutiny, the training, the requirements, so they prefer to go where it's a little bit easier.
But the scrutiny and the training is actually very, very critical, and I wish actually would do more of that. Let's talk about culture, yours and theirs, the various kids that you foster. How do you fit it all in, the differences? What culture are you bringing your children up in? I mean, Anthony, for example, Ugandan or a mix of both?
What culture?
Does he know what Mutabazi means? Does he know where it comes from? Does he, all of that?
Right, absolutely. That, yes, I live in America, and, kids are Americans, they don't know anything else, But I think for me, in some way being true to who I am, you can see my paintings are from Africa. The food we eat sometimes is, I make sure that it's from, food from home, and also show stories. Like I'm able to teach them through, even when we are going through a difficult time with the kids, to be able to really use my mom's idioms, my mom's story on how she helped me learn how to, to be obedient and listen. Food, sometimes, yes, that when they feel life has no meaning for them, they're able to go back and say, look, where I come from, his how, his why. We watch videos about where I come from. So in some way that it is not a by the way, it's not a one time, but it's an ongoing culture, infusing their culture and my culture, and be proud about it, like to really be a proud African, Ugandan especially, that kids catch on it, my son, his name is Peter Habyarimana Mutabaz. Why? Because I taught him the meanings of my middle name and my last name, and him understanding that, like, oh, it means that, the meaning was much more than what the name sounds, that he wanted that. He's like, I want to have that. So to see them in some way really embracing my my African culture, or who I am, it's really cool, and they're really proud of me. They tell every student at their school, like, yeah, my dad is from Africa. Have you met my dad? That I really find that is encouraging. Giving them both worlds, of me as Ugandan and them as American, and in some way let them kind of enjoy it rather than hide that from them, but live it every day so they can see and know where I come from. And of course I'm bringing them to Africa as soon as all these things are in place, so they can live, so they can see my family and see where I come from.
All right. Well, Peter, your story is one of those that reminds us of the goodness in the human heart, especially at a time when all we hear about is the bad things that people do. Are there other such stories out there that we do not hear about? Do you sometimes hang out with people in similar situations? Should we take comfort in the idea that despite everything, the good is much more pervasive than the evil?
Well, yes, absolutely. There's more good than bad, and I think, of course, we live in the technology, the media, the news are right on your fingertip, that it's easy to see one bad and we assume everything else is bad, yes, for me, to always look at the best or the good in people. And I think as an Africans, we have that, we have a sense of always seeing the good. The bad around us usually doesn't take away the joy, which I love, which I miss sometimes, that we learn to live that way. And that's something I cannot take away, to enjoy life, even in the midst of crisis, or even in the midst of not having enough, to know that we can be joyful, that we can share the little we have, and really not pay so much attention to the media. Because we can access every bad news goes really fast, and it's easy to focus on that and think, well, the world is really bad. No, we tell the bad, then we tell the good. So in some way to keep that perspective that we can be good and we are good and we're there for one another, and that's all that matters, even in the most difficult time, that we will strive to be positive and to enjoy life as well.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Let's take another short break and we'll be right back. Back. Thank you for staying with us. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, and in the studio with me online is Peter Mutabazi, who we are speaking to all the way from the US, and he's speaking to us about fostering. Peter, a lot of things are said about white foster parents fostering black children, and we spoke about that in the last segment. You know what they say. What do you say?
Well, again, it's fostering is a calling, to love others and to take them in is a choice that you make, and it's hard to, give it to only one race, it's all, but also on the other side, here in the United States, sometimes the white families, have more resource than others do, or have more bigger homes or extra bedroom than most do. So in some way, that they're bound to have more resource to do what others cannot do. But also, we tend to highlight just their story, and that's why we're trying to change the narrative that yes, there's hundreds and hundreds of black families that are foster parents, but we don't hear their stories. We hear Madonna, adopting kids in Zambia. We hear about, we hear all the big celebrities that are doing the same, and then in the media, it's kind of what we see, so it's hard sometimes to tell the story when it's always been told one side,
Yeah, that's true.
So yes, there's lots of families who are black, who are foster parents, that are doing amazing work, but their story are not told. And I think that's why they're telling mine, because there are very, very few in the media or in the stories where we see, especially black dads, that are fostering races that are not necessarily ours. You know why? Because we love all children, but also we are willing to embrace even the races that are not necessarily that we look like them, but every child who is in need needs someone to love them, needs someone to give them a little glimpse of hope. We don't have to always look at color, but we look at the need. And that's kind of what we like to highlight to, most people. Let's not look the color of a person, but let's humanly help them as humans. That's my take on that.
But when I was looking for you, I went to your Instagram page, and that's where I found your handle. Now they see me, something like that. What does it mean?
Yes. So, I have somehow like an organization or a company, now I'm known. Like for me, growing up in Uganda, growing up as a poor village kid, that someone gave me the opportunity to be known, gave me an opportunity to excel in school, gave me the opportunity to travel over the world, gave me the opportunity to have a good job, that he made me known. That if we can all do the same, for those who come from, well-to-do families, how can we make those who have little to be known? For kids, who most time have been forgotten or most time no one cares about, but how can we make them known? That's kind of why I studied that, to really have a passion to make sure that not everyone is left behind. Even the women who are being battered or abused or violent in their families, how can we make them known? How can they bring their problem on the platform and say, hey, this is an issue. Could we address this issue? For kids who always felt that no one, that,
Saw them.
they don't matter, or there's nothing they can say that can change anybody's attitude, to say, no, you have a voice, you matter, you can be heard. The same way, I want to make sure my kids are heard. I want to make sure that my kids know that they belong. They're not just a byway to be moved from one end to the other, but they belong to us. They belong to our community. That if we all could do a little to help the kids, then we change the world. And it doesn't matter if we're in Uganda or if we're in UK or if we're in the United States, that if we can all make an effort to give a voice, to give an opportunity for someone to be heard and they're known, that's all that matters. It changes someone's view or life when they know they matter, when they know someone's hearing, when they know they're not a by the way behind the scene, but they can be seen in the public, they can be seen in who they are, they can embrace who they are. But I think that gives us the empowerment and the joy to live a life knowing that we matter to everyone. So that's why I have a company called Now I'm Known, to make others known.
Good to know. Do you keep in touch with all the children that you've fostered? And do you have any that are older now, much older? Do you keep in touch?
Yes, so I had 13, so I keep in touch with all of them. My youngest was 2 and my oldest was 11, so now 14. So my oldest is 14 and my youngest is now 5. So yes, I keep in touch. So now I have 2. I have a 7-year-old, who I've had for the last 8 months, and he'll be going back to his parents or to his home in December. And then my son, who just turned 14. Yeah, so I like to, keep in touch. And here's why. So for me, when I became a foster parent, I really knew that, yes, I'm responsible to the government to make sure they're okay. But for me, I wanted to reach out to their parents to make sure that they're the best people that can help me to parent them as a single dad. So in some way, in partnership with them, knowing that they're going back, created a good relationship. It's easy to judge where they come from. It's easy to judge moms who are going through difficult without understanding why they got there. So for me, to know that I'm not just fostering a child, but I have to include their mom and dad, that I have to embrace them without judging them. And that has given me, a little opportunity to stay in lives of their children because of that.
All right. Did you ever get to a point where you had to sit down with Anthony and explain the circumstances that brought you together, understanding that, you're not his biological father? Is it a difficult conversation? How do you have that conversation?
So Anthony's 14, so I got him when he was 11. And for him, he was put in the system when he was 1 year and a half, and then he was adopted by a family when he was 4. The family that adopted him are the one who dropped him at the hospital and never came back. So for him, he has had a bad history with the parents who have loved him and at one point just kind of let him go. So that conversation is something that we have to do often to remind him, like, I love you and you're mine, and I'm not gonna let you go. But also I get to speak on big stages all over the world, all over the United States. So he gets to come with me. So he gets to hear me tell the story of how my journey of coming from Africa and being his dad in a way, that I think, at 14, he's old enough to want to know. And also I want him to know, that that's what I signed up for. I get to help other kids, and sometimes I have to sit with him and say, okay, there's a kid that needs help. Is that okay if he can come, And sometimes he'll be like, yeah, I don't want another one. But usually I remind him, like, yeah, they were like you. They didn't have where to go, just like you. But I opened my door, that we ought to do the same. That I want him to understand that maybe in the future too, they can have a joy and passion to help those who are in need. So yes, we talk about it often, and we also look so different in some way, that I think, you know, people ask him like, is that really your dad? You know, that he has to explain himself in a good way. And so it keeps the story and the topic fresh literally weekly.
Right. Well, listening to you speak about how you're going out of your way to help a lot of other parents doing what you're doing, we know that as children grow up, adopted children often wonder why their biological parents abandoned them or weren't able to be there for them, growing up. They may even believe that there's something wrong with them, and this can damage them psychologically. Have you had to deal with that? And how do you advise other parents to deal with situations like those?
Yes, I had to deal with that. You know, most time, the children always, they ask themselves, why would my mom let me be taken? Or sometimes they feel guilty of being in a good place, knowing that their parents are in a bad place. So constantly you have to really, help them. And the trauma, that's how it affects them, to know that why would someone abuse me that and my mom did not do anything? So in some way, helping them understand where they come from, helping them understand that it wasn't not their fault, and you have to bring their families in, especially knowing that they're going back, like you have to include their parents to help them in some way deal what mentally they are really dealing with. For me, I'm against parents who don't want to expose or tell their kids where they came from and who their parents are. It doesn't matter. We all have a history, that I think kids I feel like they have the brain and the stamina to take on whatever their parents went through, rather than hide it. And the kid is always wondering, why did my mom give away? What happened? But I think if we can be, healthy and tell the story in the best way possible, than damaging the other parents, I think it works well. And that's for me what I like to really focus on the positive. When my kids get sick, I call the mom and say, hey, the little one is not feeling well. What should I do? And the mom is able to tell me, oh, you do this, you do that. And then I say, hey, I just talked to mom and mom said I can do 1, 2, 3, 4. So they feel that I love their mom that much, that we are partners in and that really comforts the child, knowing that I am in fighting for the mom and we have a good relationship as well. And so they are not feeling ashamed or they don't feel like I'm against their mom, which most parents do, that they will be really anti the parents. And that causes friction, but also for a child, really confusing. Why do you dislike my parents? Rather than, help them love their parents as who they are. We can't change what happened, but we can love them as who they are. And I think that really helps the child deal with the trauma the best way possible.
All right, Peter, our time is fast spent, but I know that you have a Facebook Live every, I think, is it Wednesday or something, where you take questions that people want to ask you and you respond to them in real time. So if you want to tell us about that, but also as you close, what more can we do? Me, you, everybody else out there, what more can we do for the children out there?
Well, absolutely. Yeah. So we have a live Thursday. Every Thursday, I post questions so people can ask me. So every Thursday, and my Instagram is Foster Dad Flip, because I flip houses as well. So I buy old homes and then I change them and sell them. So that's why I have the handle, Foster Dad Flipper. So you can follow me on that. Then the other final word is, I think traditional, we all know you have to be married and have children and yada, yada, yada. I think we have to stop thinking always the traditional way. If you're a mom or if you're a lady or if you're a man and you have an extra bedroom and you have a little something that you can help, don't always think about the traditional way. I think we have to say, look, I'm single, I have resource. I can be a mentor to a boy that needs that. I'm a single female, and I think I can bring in a little girl that I can truly be a mom to. That if we can think that way, rather than always the traditional way, I have to be married to do this. No, I'm not married. I'm single. But yet I'm the best. I'm trying to do the best I can to be a dad. So we can all change how we see. Our tradition tell us that we have to be married in order to be a parent. No, we don't have to. While we are waiting to be married, we can truly change the lives of children. And that's what I'm doing. I want to get married, but while I'm not, and I have resource, I'm going to be the dad I can be. There's some who are not able to have children. Can we be that parent to that kid? And I think that's what I can say. But also the other part, like, let's not judge the parents. Sometimes it's easy to point a finger at someone else, but without understanding what they went through. So rather, if we could rather embrace them and get to learn what happened than always pointing a finger, I think we will make the difference to our children. And if we need a future, if we need the best world we could have, we got to invest in kids, because they'll be there tomorrow, the next year, and years to come, and they're the ones to make a change. But we have to start there with them.
All right. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for what you're doing. It sets a really, really great example for the men and the women out there. I know it's a lot easier in Africa with tech-in communities. You're practically, fostering so many people, but I think what you're doing is absolutely great. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, and it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Well, thank you for having the voice, and on behalf of the kids here in the United States and kids in Uganda, we want to say thank you for always bringing the voice, for always saying they matter, and giving them the platform to tell their story. So thank you.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Coming up is NTV Weekend Edition.